Hey everyone, I'm Ian Brennan, the Workshop Director for Accounting Practice Academy. Just jumping in here before the episode to let you know that this interview is part and parcel of a short podcast series Brannon and I have coordinated called The Power of Focus. We asked ourselves what really separates great accounting firms from the rest. And we've realized that the answer is focus. Focusing on where you as a firm owner add value, the right staff, the right clients. Proper focus shapes your practice, and unfortunately, so does a lack of focus. So in this series, you'll hear from seasoned firm owners, Accounting Practice Academy alumni, and industry experts, all sharing real-world examples of what happens when you focus on the right things. If these conversations spark some ideas and you'd like more in-depth tools for practice improvement, you can visit accountingpracticeacademy.com. That's all for me. Now, enjoy the episode.
I'm Brandon Poe, and this is the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast, where you can enjoy engaging conversations about mergers and acquisitions and accounting practice management. Listen in on strategies to build a more fun and valuable accounting firm. Welcome to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. We have a fun episode in store for you today. We're switching it up. So Ian Brennan, who works for Poe Group Advisors and heads up our Accounting Practice Academy workshop, is going to be interviewing me, and I'm just going to let him introduce himself and tell you what this episode is all about.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ian Brennan. You may recognize me from past 8 podcast episodes. I've been on a couple there, one interviewing you and Carol about the making of Accounting Practice Academy, and then some other in this series. And yeah, you might see me from being the workshop director of Accounting Practice Academy. I've been doing that for several years now. I've been with Poe Group for about 6 years, and I'm loving it. I get to work with accounting firm owners and help support them, help build a vision, integrate and make changes to just run a better firm and essentially just enjoy life a little bit more. So today's episode, I'll be interviewing you to ask you some questions about the power of focus in accounting firms. We've got this mini series that's all about the importance of focus. And so, Brandon, I'd like to kind of pull out some pearls of experience when it comes to what you've seen focus do for accounting practice firms. So I guess our first question, I'd love to know how did you start thinking about the importance of focus in accounting firms?
Well, I guess it was about, it's going on 15 to 20 years ago. I picked up a copy of a book titled The 80-20 Principle. It was a book that just it was one of those like foundational type of principles that just changed the way I looked at a lot of things, not just in business. And if you haven't read that book, I'd highly recommend picking up a copy. It's just a really interesting phenomena about how humans behave and how we operate.
Yeah, for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about how that principle works.
Yep.
Where you see it. Yeah.
So there was it's also known as the Pareto Principle, and it was kind of discovered by a Italian, I guess maybe a philosopher, Pareto. And he noticed, when he looked around, he noticed that about 20% of the property, and this goes back hundreds of years, was owned by 80% of the property was owned by 20% of the people. And so then that got him studying about all sorts of things, and he recognized that this pattern is just repeated over and over and over again in all sorts of human behavior. And, if you think about it yourself, if you look at the clothes in your closet, for example, most people wear about 20% of their clothing items 80% of the time. And that 80% in your closet, that's just very, very rarely, if ever, gets worn. It's that way with traffic patterns in your house, the rooms that you occupy in your house. Just the pattern is you can apply it.
It's all over. Yeah.
There are infinite applications of it. And so, that's kind of what got me really
where it all started,
thinking about the power of focusing. And, if you think about, like, from a business perspective, I've known this for a long time because I've been in sales for a long time. And it happens on sales teams. Like 20% of the salespeople will produce 80% of the results of a company. And that's a pattern that's just consistently reported on with sales organizations. When you look at client lists in an accounting firm, when you look at just the activities that you perform on a daily basis, 20% of those activities are probably responsible for 80% of your results, and so on and so forth. So, that got me, we work with a lot of firms And we see a lot of profit and loss statements because people are always wanting valuations. They're wanting to get their practices ready for a sale. They're putting their practices on the market. So we're privy to all that financial information. And so I'm reading this book and I'm doing the work that we do. And I'm recognizing like, man, there is this huge disparity in results in accounting practices. There are practitioners out there that are just doing amazingly well because they're focusing well. I noticed it's just the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
The pattern was then very recognizable to me as I'm looking at different accounting firm financial statements on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it hit me.
That's great. Yeah. It's fascinating to be able to apply that across the board, but specifically niche down into accounting firms because we're selling them, we're lifting up the hood, we're seeing what's going on inside and pulling out all the pieces that reflect that 80-20 principle. Yeah. Can you think of any stories without naming names or examples that you really saw that principle? Like, were there some that were doing it really well and some that were struggling with it?
Yeah. I would say most are struggling. 80% are struggling and 20% are doing really well.
Yeah, of course.
So, there was one in particular, a practice that we sold. Gosh, it's probably been 10, 15 years ago now. So these numbers, I'll give you the rough numbers on this practice, which remember, it's, in today's dollars, this would be even higher numbers. So it was a single owner firm. The revenue of the practice was about 2.3 million. That's rare in itself at the time for a single owner
Still good.
to do that much revenue. And then his cash flow to owner was over $1 million a year. So his margins were really, really strong. And then the real kicker was he took 3 months a year off. So it was like, this is a phenomenally successful firm.
Yeah.
So what's the key here? And that was a really interesting example. And there have been several of those examples. And you've heard the expression, there's more than one ways to skin a cat. Well, it's the same here. It's, what he did. What he was really good at is one model, but there are several models I've seen that are very successful and they're going about it in a different way.
Could you enlighten me to a few of those models? Are some people really focusing on mix of service? Are some people really focusing on advisory or the clients? What are the angles some firm owners could take?
So I'll give you kind of two very different examples. One is kind of ties in with the model of the seller that I was just talking about. His model was high price, kind of like big clients, high value services, very strong team, very complicated work, complex work, high price, right? And then the other model I've also seen successful is high volume, low complexity.
Yeah.
High efficiency, also having a good team, but that kind of efficiency model. And I think a lot of accountants chase the efficiency model, but they don't get the pricing right, or they don't get the staffing right, or it's hard to build that.
Or they're trying to be simple, but they're still bringing on too many lines of service. So it complicates it because you're trying to go too many different directions.
Yeah. I mean, both of those models are kind of hard they both have their separate challenges.
Right.
Like, for example, to do really complicated professional services, you got to have the right people, and those people are hard to find, and they're hard to keep, and they're just that's the difficult piece of that. Whereas the high volume model, it's easy to get out of focus. You start piling on different service models and service things, and then before you know it, you have a complexity because you're trying to do too many things.
Right. These models feel almost like threading the needle. Like you've set yourself up, you've found the good staff, and it's taken you years to build. If somebody's just getting started, really trying to focus in, I'm sure there's a couple areas. I mean, we've seen it in the workshop. There's a couple areas that you can focus in on. I think about a future episode that you'll hear in this series with Greg Toner about focusing and niching down. Can you tell us more about kind of like how that can affect a practice and what that can do for a firm?
The niching down?
Niching down.
So, I mean, that's a really good example of focusing, right? It's like you become laser focused on one niche or niche, however you want to say it. And what happens when you do that is you get really good at that work, and you get your competence you gain competence really quickly when you're highly focused on one industry or one vertical. And the other thing that happens is I've seen those models scale faster because if you're competing with a generalist, let's say you're specialized in dental practices, and you've got a really good model, a good client service model. The clients love the service because you know the industry, you're knowledgeable, you're competent, and you're efficient because you're probably doing some volume as you scale. It's pretty easy to get new business that way. And it's also easy to get business where geography doesn't matter. So it's easier to scale geographically in a
Right.
niche because people say, okay, the quality's there, the value's there, right? You become more valuable to the client. And ultimately that's what this all boils down to is, are you delivering value to the client? And the more value
And
you put out in the world, the more is going to come back to you.
mhm.
And
How,
yeah.
how does somebody sit down? What's that conversation with themselves look like? Am I providing the value I need? What else should I be offering? Like, what kind of questions get that stirred up?
Well, I think realistically, a lot of the times, let's go back to that closet example. You walk into your closet, and one day your practice is your closet, let's say, and one day you walk into your closet and you realize, like, this is a mess. Like, I've got stuff everywhere. These jeans need to go. They don't fit. I hadn't worn them in
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah.
But you go into that closet every day, and for some reason it doesn't bother you, and then one day it bothers you.
Mm.
And what most often has to happen is you've got to prune and you got to create capacity before you
Mhm.
can do anything else. And so I think a lot of practitioners find themselves into this situation where they're overwhelmed. They've got to do something. And then, the niching, I think the niching idea, sometimes a lot of people go, well, gosh, I can't just eliminate work. I can't not, if I'm narrowing my market down that much, I'm limiting myself. I'm missing out.
Mhm.
And so it's sort of, especially if you started the firm. I mean, if you started the firm from scratch or you started really small
Right.
and you've grown and you become very accustomed to like feeling like, oh, I got to grow this business. I need more clients. I need more revenue. So pruning just feels really weird to have
Right.
to do that.
Right. But I think about that closet, walking in and having the stuff that you don't wear be in the way of the stuff that you do wear and
Mm-hmm.
that you do want to prioritize. Yeah, it's what you called out that I like is noticing when like frustration shows up or when you're tired of a situation. Those are your kind of like alarm bells telling you something needs to change. We need to refocus again. We need to create capacity.
And,
Yeah.
and what's crazy is like I think this is part of human nature. Is like a lot of times we don't change until a crisis happens, until we have to
Right.
change. Either
Right.
it's a health problem or it's a relationship problem, a family problem, whatever it is. A
Mhm.
key staff member quits. There are lots of little trigger points that just take you over the edge. But
Mhm.
what's kind of frustrating about human nature is like you can avoid the suffering. You can change before you need to,
Right.
but few people do.
Yep. Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I mean, it's the experience with all of us at all times in so many different areas. It's about looking at the practice and realizing that I can't remember the exact book, but they talk about the domino habit, the first habit that changes so many others behind it. And I think about how there's a couple of those, depending on how your firm's set up, that if you knock the domino, you'll start to, whether it's a package service model or a price increase, you knock, or letting go of a couple clients, you knock one domino. And I've heard from so many firm owners through the workshop, it all just started to fall. We just started to change things and move things. What are some other examples from APA alum that you can think of where they kind of knocked that first domino or what that domino might have been?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think about Bill and Chris Murphy, who took Academy, I think in like 2022. I know we've got a podcast that we're going to release from them about their experience.
Right.
I think really when they looked at their client list and they saw how much work was being done for how little money on a certain segment of their client list, that was like a profound aha. And then they started taking action. They took really swift action. They pruned their clients that weren't profitable. And that takes a lot of courage. And it's not easy because you have relationships with these people, and most accountants are very caring and very truly client focused. And so that's a really hard thing to do, is to let some clients go. And it's an example of, they were ready to make change. They were committed to making change. And so once they had I think that was the first domino for them.
Yeah, I think about pricing as well, as there's just so much. You keep saying it's a big lever that a lot of people aren't quite tapping into. Can you tell more about that? Just the importance of pricing and how it's not a threat to your clients. It is a way to serve them in a healthier way.
Yeah, I mean, if you're undercharging your clients, they probably know it, but they're not going to come to you and say, "Hey, I think you should charge me more." It just doesn't
Yeah.
happen very often. I've just seen it so often. Um, there's so much underpricing that happens in this profession for a number of reasons. I think part of the reason is accountants are caring, they're client focused, and most accountants, or a lot of accountants, are somewhat personally frugal. And so maybe they're price sensitive in their own life, and they don't realize that their clients are really not that price sensitive. And so there's this like fear of implementing price increases that might upset clients or might lose clients, or, there is a lot of uncertainty. When you start raising prices, sometimes clients do leave. Sometimes they do get upset. That's part of it. And so again, it takes courage to make that move. But
Yeah.
it just, a lot of times, yeah, okay, you need to lose a few clients, right? You need to lose some clients that are not profitable, and it's okay to lose some. And
Mhm.
yeah, you'll get a few phone calls, but I would say most of our members in Academy who have raised prices have been surprised by how little pushback they got on price increases and how few client losses they've had. I mean, we've had members really make some pretty dramatic price increases in order to create capacity.
Mhm.
And they realize, like, it didn't create any capacity. Like, nobody left, maybe
Yeah.
one or two left. And they're like,
Hoping for the
what do we
leave.
got to
Yeah.
do what do we got to do to create capacity? And the truth is, if you really want a client to leave, you got to just terminate the relationship.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot more pricing power. Most accounting firms have more pricing power than they realize.
Mhm.
And when they do, it drops to the bottom line. It just all drops to the bottom line.
Mhm. I mean, we always say nature abhors a vacuum. When you create, no matter what, it will fill back in when you create that space. And so to be able to lean in, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're exactly right. Like, I think losing a client is not as big of a problem as people think either. Like, even if you lose your largest client, most practitioners who've been in the business for a long time have experienced that. Maybe not because they terminated the relationship, but maybe the client outgrew them and they lose their biggest client. It's happened to a lot of people. And I always ask, when I hear that, I say, how long did it take for you to replace that revenue? And most people think, gosh, it didn't take long at all. I get filled right
No.
back up.
Yeah.
Like, my year to year numbers didn't even really change that much. And the following year, I was way up. So,
Mhm.
especially in this market, there's a shortage of CPAs in this market. So there are a lot of firms, I talk to practitioners and they say, we're not taking new clients. We have to even be selective about the referrals that come to us. And I hear from people all the time, they call around and they can't find a CPA. Nobody's
Mhm.
taking new clients. So it's a supply and demand equation. It's pricing power.
Yep. Yeah.
And
And
yeah.
go ahead.
And you shouldn't feel guilty about that, because it allows you to pay your people better. It allows you to
Right.
give them better working conditions. And,
Right.
that the profession needs that to attract new people into the profession, because new people are not coming into the accounting profession because the old guard is not running, or they aren't running their firms
80,
well.
80 hours a week isn't going to cut it
It's
anymore.
not going to cut it.
It's not what anybody wants to work, and it's not what they need to be working.
Yeah.
There is a way to provide quality service with a team that's happy, with a payroll that's good, and the clients are coming away knowing that they're being taken care of, knowing that their business is being served well. There is a transformation going on in the accounting industry, and
Yeah.
I think the old guard is having to change places. So yeah, it makes me think, like, the importance of pricing comes with. I'm coming back to the theme of focus. Like, the right clients. You need to be able to focus on the right clients to know what to price, how to price, what they're wanting. And that takes like almost a deep dive into their needs, into what they're asking. And it takes time and space with that ideal client. Can you talk about maybe some examples or just some things you've picked up when it comes to the right client, how to find and focus on that right client?
Yeah, well, I think client selection is probably one of the biggest things that we have uncovered is like what I heard a quote. I can't remember where it came from, but like the biggest way to head trash is to have the wrong clients, that just are frustrating and you don't enjoy talking to or working with. And as you know, we've got a podcast by Rick Payne all about client selection, and the importance of it. I think the right client is going to be different for different CPAs, right? Like the right client for one might definitely not be the right client for another for a variety of reasons. But, what I say is like, you probably have some really good clients that you enjoy working with already in your practice. Well, there's your answer right there. Just go and analyze those top relationships. What is it you like about them? What is it about the work that you like? And
Are you good at it?
are
Yeah.
you good at it?
Yeah.
You're providing value. It's generally, it goes back to that value proposition. Like,
Right.
you're providing value. You see it, the client sees it, they appreciate it. That's usually what it is. And unfortunately, back to the closet analogy, you walk in that closet and it's hard to figure out where to put your attention, because it's just such a mess. And if you're putting out fires all day long in your business and it's just this chaotic day-to-day existence, you're probably ignoring those better clients in some way because you're
I even
not
think,
focusing on them,
right,
focusing on them.
right. And where you're tuning your staff's focus. I mean, I imagine sit down and ask your staff, who are the clients that you want to work with, that you come away feeling like you did a great job, you feel valued. Who are they? Let's build a list. Let's build that A-tier list. And then, yeah, I think the answers are under the hood. It requires taking some time, some stepping back and doing a diagnostic on your own practice.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about, and I smile as I think about this idea that CPAs, it's tricky to implement because they know it all. They're
Yeah.
very smart.
Yeah. Well, they are. They're
And I mean that
smart.
with all endearment. You're very smart, but there is that can keep you in the weeds.
Yeah, it goes back to the quote. Years ago, I had this in my email signature. It was, the biggest obstacle to learning something new is the belief that you already know it. And that is a real obstacle. And so I think you have to be willing to realize, like, maybe I don't have all the answers. Maybe I'm not focusing my efforts in the right places. Maybe there is a better way. And if you can't get to that point, then you're going to get the same results that you've always gotten because you're going to be doing the same things that you've always done. It's really simple. So again, this stuff is not really that hard conceptually. And
It's easy to wrap your head around. Yeah.
Most things are not. They just take focus and commitment
Before crisis.
Before a crisis.
Or, I mean, even in crisis, but ideally, if this podcast can get into your earwaves and help you think, how can I focus today? How can I focus now? That will set my future up. And we think about it in terms of, let's say you want to sell the practice in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. There's a couple things that can allow you to delight in this practice, have a healthy team, a great client experience for those 10 years.
Yeah.
But it requires some focus. Yeah. I love it. Brannon, you got another thought? Go for it.
No, I was going to say that, the reason, you need to have a reason to change, right? And if you're trying to exit, that usually is a very motivating reason to make improvements, to get your firm ready to optimize it for the market, which a lot of our members do. But don't you love it when someone who's kind of like early in their career gets a hold of this stuff and just grabs a hold and runs with it? I mean, Greg Toner is a great example of that, right? Just a younger, really sharp CPA. And, I'm referencing some of the podcasts in this series. So if you haven't seen those, go check them out. Or check them out once they get released. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even if you want to talk to that example a little bit more, like what kind of lights you up about his journey? What feels so meaningful?
Well, just the success. I think when you get someone who's, let's face it, when we get older, we start to lose a little bit of energy. But when we're young, we have a lot of energy. And we haven't made as many mistakes, so we're more enthusiastic about approaching things because we haven't ever really been burned. But just seeing him, first of all, grab the concepts and you can see it, right? You can see the excitement once they take a hold of a concept and they're like, wow, I can see how this would work, right? I can see it. I can see the path. I can see the vision.
Yeah.
You kind of light up their vision. Being young and energetic, they've got the energy to execute. And so that's what's exciting, is seeing someone really excited about a new vision, excited about a new concept, and then quickly putting together what their path is and then just executing on it, energetically. It's really something to see.
To move swiftly, I don't want to say it's lacking in awareness of the risk. I think he still understands the risk.
Yeah.
I think a lot of practices that do still know that bottom line or that revenue matters, their team matters, but there is a willingness to let some smaller risks bounce off you to be able to achieve the goal.
Yeah.
To take the short-term pain rather than just like put that extra pair of jeans back in the closet and we'll deal with it later.
Yeah. I do think there is like a temperament component to this, right? Like I do believe Greg, for example, is a very entrepreneurial, his mindsets he came to us with very entrepreneurial mindsets where it's okay to take a little risk. I can accept some imperfection. I can accept a little messiness in making this happen. So, and I do think our academy is very much a mindset workshop. It's really about those mindsets and getting you to challenge the status quo and getting you to think more strategically.
And I would say that academy aside, if any of these ideas spark some desire to change or focus, whether it's your pricing or your clients, what we've learned, what I've seen working in the academy for these past 6 years is that any temperament, any firm can focus on something and really see a benefit regardless of the workshop. You're able to still make some changes in small ways that can be that domino to knock the rest, that have huge potential upside. And it really does, if I can encourage anything, just stepping away for a moment, creating some space for your firm and like lifting up the hood. Just analyze your client list. Just take some time to see your practice from a high level. It can transform the future of your practice. So yeah.
Awesome.
I love it. Well, great. Brannon.
Yeah.
Great episode. It's been a ton of fun.
Ian, you're really good at this interviewing stuff. You should do it more.
Thanks. Maybe I will. Maybe we start an Accounting Practice Academy podcast.
Yeah.
Just get into it. I love it. Well, great, Brannon. Any last things to share with the audience? It's been a pleasure interviewing you. Yeah.
No, I think you did a great job of grabbing some of this stuff. I think the only thing I'll leave them with is, we do have several episodes in this series that we're producing, and hopefully if you got value today, keep listening to some of those, and I'm sure you'll get value from those as well.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. You can keep the momentum going by subscribing and sharing your thoughts with us. Visit our website at PoeGroupAdvisors.com for more resources, and tune in next time for more exciting conversations like this one.
This podcast was produced and edited by Liesl Epps of Poe Group Advisors. Thanks for listening.